Hey, Alex.
Hey,
I like that
Patrick.
right as this started, it said at the bottom of the screen, I don't know if this shows up for the users, but it says Alex has added Google Effects.
I clicked on it the very moment that we hit on the air, so I have that queued up and ready to go just in case.
Yeah, I'm
Just
sure
in case.
I'm sure you will find some reason for that. Um, this is Bombin the A.M. with Scoops the Wolf, and we have our fancy new art,
Ow!
which we thank Very Sexy Potato for. I think I
Yes.
remember that name off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure that was it.
It's an easy name to remember, I think.
Um, how was your weekend?
My weekend was pretty good. I didn't do a whole lot, but that was very much on purpose because,
Mm,
I've been traveling a lot this month, and I'm going to be traveling again next week, as will you, as we head to Seattle. So I took it pretty easy. Mostly just kind of hung out at home. I went and saw The World's End, which I will talk about actually on the movie podcast, which Rory and I are recording this week, and played a lot of Madden because I need to review that before we leave, which I will probably do for tomorrow. Which I know you've gotten back into football. Have you been playing Madden at all in the last few years? Much at
No, I
all?
mean I decided like my way of getting myself into football was to I used fantasy as a way to like make myself interested and invested in the games that weren't just my division, and that worked actually out pretty well.
It's a
So
good
that
gateway. It is a good gateway.
because then it gets you to know the players, it gets you to have some stake in the game, and then sort of once you know the different sort of dramatic arcs of the different teams, then it becomes interesting, sort of regardless of whether you've got fantasy points on the line. But Madden, I don't know. I've given it a shot a couple different times. I think the series in general uh, exclusively caters to its existing fan base, which it should, and I understand that. But it sort of has an inherent problem of not being very friendly to newcomers, or at least when I've tried, I've played it and just like I don't, maybe it's just I don't understand enough of the nuance of the real nitty gritty. But it's like, well, I sort of know what like a nickel package is, but not really, and the game doesn't do a good job of sort of like getting you accustomed to what those phrases are.
Yeah, there's an assumption in those games that if you are buying a $60 football game, you are invested enough in football to understand most of the basics of football. And they have, in recent years, made some strides to try and make things a little bit more accessible. They've combined certain modes like the franchise and the owner mode and the create like the play as a superstar mode are all kind of one thing now. There's been here and there some more useful tutorials on certain aspects of the game that kind of helped explain certain features that didn't make a lot of sense to me. But man, I don't know. It's like I'm playing this year's game. Yeah, it's like they fixed some stuff. There's some other things that are kind of broken. Like it just this is theoretically the last of the Maddens of any real note on this console generation, and I'm playing this game, and it's like this is the 25th anniversary one. This is the 25th game in the series. They have added and highlighted features from various sequels throughout the series in this one, and the interface is still kind of junky, and shit loads real slow, and like I've had weird crash bugs and stuff, and I was like, this is your 21st anniversary game. This is like your last big one on this console generation, and this shit barely runs well. Like, the game is fine. It's fine. They fixed some things from last year. The running game's better. There's stuff that's
Sure.
good. But, like, it just, for, a game that you have been working on in this generation for, like, 8 years at this point, it is kind of surprising to me how still kind of clunky and just unremarkable it is in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's the curse of the yearly iteration plus no competition. I imagine just
Yeah.
it makes it inherently difficult. And I don't know a whole lot about the development process of the Madden games, but it also probably makes it difficult to lobby for additional time and resources when it's like, well, what's the point, right? Like,
Right.
what is like the Madden series? My understanding is that the sales have been sort of on a precipitous decline in like the last 10 years or so, but still sells exceptionally well.
Yeah, they're
And
still the
I
best-selling EA Sports game by far.
and I can't imagine that there'd be any reason for that to change unless they saw a financial incentive to do so. So I
Yeah.
mean, are you really going to see hardcore Madden fans like not buy that year's version? Well, no, because they don't have an option, right? It's not like this is a Battlefield Call of Duty situation where you can just kind of jump ship to the other side, and maybe that will incentivize, the team you were just on to buck up, because you don't have that option in football.
No.
And that's, yeah, I mean, we talked about that, I think, in a previous episode, but that continually bums me out, just because I think it would do EA well and it would do gamers well, but unfortunately it's just not really an option. But I did buy this year's version, but that's only because it comes with the DirecTV sort of promotion, or the Sunday Ticket promotion, which there is some debate about how that will apply. I will find out, because that game comes out this week, right?
Yes, it does.
So I don't know if I leave on Wednesday morning for PAX, so I don't know if my copy will show up before then. I'm sure the internet will let me know how it shakes out, but basically,
I'll let you know tomorrow.
Okay, so like the promotion that's going on with this one is that if you order the anniversary edition of Madden, which is $100, you get a redemption code for the PC and tablet versions of Sunday Ticket, which gets you access to all the games except for the ones that are local, because they assume that you could watch that on your TV and flick over to that and see the ads that go with that and what have you. So apparently, and that's normally like if you're going to buy that on PS3, they don't offer it this year, but when they did, it was like $400 the first year. I think it was $300 last year, and it's not being offered this year. Otherwise, you have to get DirecTV and pay money or threaten to quit to get a free package. But it's a lot of money, and getting it for essentially $40 is crazy. But apparently some of the wrinkles may involve, like, it only works if you are not in an area where you can get DirecTV, but then EA has said, oh, that's not true, but then when you ask DirecTV, they say, oh, that is true. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I think enough people are going to get angry that I'll probably get what I want.
Fair enough. Also, as it was pointed out, no, FIFA is by far the best-selling EA Sports game, so I should just correct myself right there and just.
I wonder if Madden ends up being the best-selling North American EA Sports game, and then FIFA is the biggest-selling worldwide, because I think that's certainly something that we miss out on, being sort of like North American centric, is that I don't care about football/soccer, but there's a whole lot of people in the world that do, and that's part of why one of the secret things that EA makes a lot of money on is the the FIFA, what do they call it? It's the trading card sort of game.
The Ultimate Team game.
Yes, yeah, which is not so big here. Mostly we know about it over here because there were some exploits that people were upset about that led to some account compromising. But anyway, that's a lot of football. You also played. Did you play some Saints Row over the weekend?
I haven't had a chance to play Saints Row yet. Oh, I feel so bad. But, like, again, I've been trying to get this review stuff out of the way. At some point, I'm hoping Rayman is going to show up because I'm supposed to work on that next.
Is that next week?
That is, I believe, if it's not next week, it's the week after. It's soon. But regardless, I'm waiting for a time where I can actually just sit down and focus on it, because I don't want to just play for like an hour and be like, all right, I have to go do a million other things and kind of flick around in that game. Like, I actually want to spend some time with it. You've spent some time with it. Tell me, Patrick, how are you feeling about Saints Row 4?
It's good. I don't know. I'm not flipping out for it. I think it's a lot of fun. It does have a bit of a expansion pack feel. I think with the core changes to the gameplay, in which they infuse you with superpowers and allow you to jump around this city and kind of do whatever you want, that works wonderfully well. It's so much fun. It scratches the sort of Crackdown itch that Crackdown 2 was not able to really do that successfully. It's tremendously fun to sort of circumvent the rules of the world by the game giving you an opportunity to do that in and of itself. But other than the story stuff, like I thought the side missions in Saints Row the Third were not that great to begin with, and
yeah, I did all of them, but you're right, they weren't that great.
And I think it's even worse in Saints Row 4, where, with the exception of the loyalty missions, basically this doesn't spoil too much, but when you've got sort of your crew, you can upgrade your crew to like a superpowered version of themselves by doing a loyalty mission, and those are great. You get some backstory about them. There's a lot of funny dialogue, but outside of that, there are all these side missions that are associated with the different members of your crew, but it's just making you go around and do the boring side missions, like go hack some stores, go clear out some aliens from this space, go do a race. And I don't like doing any of those side things. I think the side ones are better in this game, but they're not great. They're mostly just an excuse to kind of keep plucking around in the world, and I think they did a better job of giving me an excuse to stay in the world beyond the story with the little Crackdown type orbs that they have you collecting. Like that's fun. Mechanically, it's interesting because it tests your platforming skills and your sense of sort of direction and height management. But yeah, it's not. It is more than just an expansion pack, but it doesn't. The story-wise, it makes sense why it's called Saints Row 4. Content-wise, I feel like it may be a bit of a stretch.
Right.
But then again, given how that game was developed, given what happened with THQ, I'm not surprised that this sequel, this version of the game, is maybe a little weird, and that the true sort of sequel that we're looking for is, the one coming down the pike, obviously, probably in 2 years or so.
Yeah, I think it's great that they were able to wring one more what sounds like pretty great game out of this current crop of technology. Though it sounds like they had some real problems on the 360 and PS3 from what I've heard from people who play the console versions. I bought the PC version this time around just from watching Jeff try to play the 360 version and looking at all like the weird frame hitches and other junk that was going on. I was like, nah, PC, got to do it.
Yeah, if you have the option, it definitely seems to fit in line with a lot of other games like that, where it's not unplayable on the consoles, but if you have the option, it seems like you would be better served playing a lower detail version on the PC than trying to get your consoles to run it. Whether that's just the tech being stretched too far or not enough time for optimization, it definitely falls in the camp of a lot of other games where just if you have the option to play it on PC, you should, but certainly seems like you can. It's playable. It's just know what you're getting into with those versions. But
yeah. Well, speaking of open world games and Saints Row in general, I thought we might talk about a few headlines here before we talk about some other stuff and what have you. One of the things that happened late last week, which I don't think we really got into on the show last week, was some of the GTA 5 leak stuff. So some details of that game did leak out. We are obviously not going to repeat any story spoilers or anything else that's out there. I haven't even been looking at that stuff, and I won't. However, the one thing I did want to bring up was that the soundtrack for GTA 5 leaked. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at this yet, but when it comes to judging open world games, I feel, especially open world like kind of crime action type games, the soundtrack is really one of the first places you start. You look at it because GTA has always been kind of, at least since Vice City has been kind of a benchmark of quality for licensed music in games, and then the last two Saints Row entries have been nothing short of phenomenal soundtrack wise. So I thought this would be a good little who you got head-to-head sort of battle here for us to look at.
The one thing I will say is that so in Saints Row 4, because you have all the superpowers, you never need to be in a car.
Right.
And there are only a couple of times where it forces you to be in a car for a mission-specific reason, and that bums me out. I mean, I like not being in the car and running around, but I also just don't listen to the soundtrack because I've got no reason to be in the car.
I thought there was something they did where you could listen to the soundtrack when you were just running around with a certain ability.
Maybe. I haven't looked. Maybe I could be wrong about that.
I think there's like an implant you can use to just listen to the soundtrack while you're just running around inside the Matrix world or whatever.
Shit. If that's true, I'm going to have to look into that.
Double check that. I'm not 100% sure, but I just want to throw it out there. So
I
don't know.
So like the nice part about soundtracks, they kind of give you a sense of the tone of the game. So like what are you getting from GTA 5?
What am I getting from GTA 5? What I'm getting is that with the last time they did San Andreas, Los Angeles, what have you, they went for a real West Coast vibe, and the fact that it was set in the 90s meant that you were getting a lot of that, that great 90s hip hop, gangster rap, alternative rock stuff. This is much more akin, it seems like, to something like the GTA 4 soundtrack, where they are definitely playing up, the coastal vibe, but they've gone more modern and added, stuff from like way further back. So there's plenty of West Coast rap, Tupac, NWA, Snoop Dogg, Ghetto Boys, Too Short, Ice Cube, Dog Pound, like all that stuff. Then you kind of get into the old punk stuff. There's like the Germs, Black Flag, Descendants, Circle Jerks, TSOL, Suicidal Tendencies, Fear. Then you get into like the party music, and it's like, hey, here's Foreigner, The Cult, Steve Miller Band, Eddie Murphy's Party All the Fucking Time.
All right, well, man, Game of the Year.
Yeah.
Game of the Year. I don't know. Why don't more people appreciate Eddie Murphy's Party All the Time? I don't even like that. Song. I don't even like that ironically. I just genuinely like that song because it's so dumb.
It's so good. It's such a good song.
I put it on at a bachelor party last 2 weekends ago, and no one appreciated it. And I almost
Nah,
left. I almost left. It's like, if I'm at a party where no one can appreciate Eddie Murphy's Party all the time, what kind of party am I at?
exactly, and that's and so just looking down this soundtrack, it's a really nice cross section of different stuff. Again, this is an alleged leak, but it sounds like it's pretty close to the real thing, if not the real thing. It's a really nice mix of music. The one thing I will say, and the one thing that Saints Row, thus far, at least insofar as the moments I've seen of 4 and what I played of 3, is that Saints Row is very big on soundtrack moments in the
Yes.
game. They are terrific at taking big licensed songs and making them kind of the undercurrent to whatever action is going on. I mean, the Kanye Power moment from Saints Row 3 is a particularly good one. I've only seen a couple of the ones they've teased from the trailers. I haven't had a chance to play the game yet, but it seems like 4 has some really good ones as well. The one thing I wonder is, as good as GTA music and radio and all that stuff is, it's always great. They aren't always big on like these big set piece song moments. So I don't know if they're gonna use any of that stuff in 5. I don't know if they'd want to. Maybe they don't want to like do things just like the way Saints Row did, because there is still that like kind of weird rivalry between those two games. But I don't know. I'm hopeful because I see something like Party all the time. It's like, you know what? I want a fucking massive bloody shootout set to Eddie Murphy's Party all the time.
Yeah,
Am I
like
wrong
a
for that?
bank heist with like
Yeah.
Party all the time. I hope there's more stuff like that, because I'm the kind of person when I've played GTA games in the past, like ever since open world games have started coming up with ways to expedite the travel process, whether it's through literally just fast traveling from a map screen or getting in a taxi to get you to a mission faster. I tend to play maybe the first 5 hours where I like exploring the city, and I like going from place to place in the car, and slowly, and getting there, how the game wants me to do it. And then at some point it's like, well, I want to get to the mission, right? Like that, I've seen the city. It's not like they've recreated. It's not like LA Noire. I never fast traveled. I
Right.
went to every single spot because it was fascinating to be in this detail-oriented, recreated, real city. Down to some very specific nuances, and that's just not the case in GTA 5. Like it's a fictional city that has taken inspiration.
Are you talking about Saints Row? You mean?
No, from Grand Theft Auto.
Okay, because I mean GTA 5 is basically like the LA layout. I know it's fictional, but it is very similar to a lot of the LA stuff.
But it's they take enough license with it
Sure.
that it's not like I feel like I'm going to a place in reality in the same way I did in LA Noire. Basically, it means like I'll see enough of it, and then
Yeah.
I'm okay with moving on, and I'll just fast travel in a taxi. So I don't end up hearing a lot of the music, I guess, is what I'm getting towards.
Sure.
And then, but in Saints Row, they have those moments, and those moments are so punctuated incredibly well by the musical accompaniment that I hope they do some stuff like that. I mean, Rockstar is going to do what Rockstar does. They are not a reactionary company in any way, shape, or form. And if anything, it makes me curious to see what 5 is like, because if there's the most pronounced leaps in Saints Row quality-wise have happened between GTA 4 and 5, and so if there ever was an opportunity for, at the very least, like GTA in its sort of jokey fiction to acknowledge the Saints Row franchise, maybe like a tip of the hat at the
Right.
very least, I'm curious to see if they do anything in that direction, because they certainly don't have any problem parodying everything else.
Yeah, I imagine it'll be subtle if it's there at all. The one thing I will say is that as much as the older GTA games definitely were like inspired by, but not necessarily really all that accurate to the cities they were based on. I played GTA 4 before I moved to New York, before I even really spent all that much time in New York, and I did a lot of what you did. Like I drove around for a while. I was like, this is cool, whatever. And then I started fast traveling everywhere. Once I moved here, I loaded it up again for the first time in a long time, and I just drove around. I drove around for like 3-4 solid hours just looking at landmarks and realizing there is actually a pretty insane minutia of detail they throw into that stuff. The fucking beer garden in my neighborhood is in that game in granted parody form, but like the Astoria beer garden is there in different form, and other like various small landmarks that I would never expect to see in a game like that are totally in there. So I wouldn't be surprised if GTA 5 had a lot of really weird, very highly specific LA references in there that you wouldn't necessarily be expecting.
Well, I did live in LA for a year and a half, so maybe this would be an instance where maybe I'll have a little more interest in it purely because I wasn't living in LA back when San Andreas came out. I was much younger when San Andreas came out, but since then I've lived in LA for nearly 2 years, so I do have a sense of what that city is like. I'm glad I don't live there, but anymore.
All right. You give me a headline now. Let's talk about something else other than open world games.
Hey, true or false? Shadow of the Eternals failed to reach its fundraising goal.
The truest thing that has ever been said in all of time.
Oh, I don't know if I don't mean to laugh or not. I'm not sure what my response is to that, but for people who haven't seen or realized that the spiritual successor to Eternal Darkness, Shadow of the Eternals, a on-again, off-again fundraising project by Precursor Games, led by Dennis Dyack and a bunch of ex-developers from Silicon Knights. They've tried on-again, off-again to get that funded through various crowd-sourcing measures, and their latest one failed pretty miserably. I think they didn't even get halfway to what they were hoping to achieve.
If you're talking about this new one, it was 400 of, I think, 750 was what they were looking for. So they got just at about the halfway mark, but they didn't go over.
Yeah, they didn't exactly rally at the end. I can't say I'm surprised. If I set aside everything, all the baggage that goes with this whole Kickstarter and this project and the problems they've had along the way and all that stuff, I do want a sequel or spiritual successor to Eternal Darkness, but it's impossible to talk about this project without all the baggage associated with it. Whether it's one of the developers being accused, albeit briefly, apparently on like child pornography charges. The Kotaku article about Dennis Dyack and his history as a manager, and they're having split crowdfunding options on their website and on Kickstarter because they're in Canada. Like, everything that could have gone wrong and every intentional jab to the heart that this studio could have done to their own project, they did. And I don't think it's as simple as, well, people don't like Dennis Dyack. Like, I think they went out of their way, clearly accidentally, I would hope so, to sort of doom their own project. And
it's really sad. It's very, very sad.
Oh, it's really sad as the people who listen to the podcast version and don't get to.
Well, you should watch the video version. That's what I always say. My opinions on this are twofold. One, I'm not really. I mean, I'm laughing only because it's to a degree it's a Charlie Brown kicking the football situation. You keep watching them try up. It's just not going to come together. You can just look. You can look around the internet and see what the interest level is of this whole project that they are working on, and see that it is not there. The money, the interest is just not there. But they are so convinced, or at least they are putting on that they are so convinced that this is going to be a thing, that their community is very, very interested in this game and all that stuff. The problem is they're not making a case. They have not made a compelling case whatsoever for whatever the hell it is they're making. I know it's supposed to be a spiritual successor to Eternal Darkness. We saw that demo, you and I, when we were at E3. We saw what they were showing. It looked fine. It looked kind of interesting. But what they were actually able to tell us over the course of that, other than Dennis Dyack just profusely apologizing for being Dennis Dyack for 30 years, did not tell me anything that would make me want to invest in this project. It's like, okay, you have some ideas for a story. You obviously have a decent little visual engine. You want to do something kind of spooky and disturbing. That's great. What's the hook? What are you actually selling me that is just like not just another random Kickstarter game? And combine the inability to make that case with all the shit you just mentioned, the weird criminal charges that may or may not have been dropped, Dennis Dyack just being Dennis Dyack, all the weird shit still surrounding the connection between Precursor and Silicon Knights, which still, as far as I'm aware, has not actually been satisfactorily figured out. I cannot fathom giving these people my money for a project that I have zero faith at this point will actually come to fruition, because there's nothing about it that has said to me these guys clearly have what they need to get this together. All I see is a bunch of guys who think they can make a game, who have a bunch of really shady kind of backgrounds that just don't. It's just not compelling. It's not interesting, and it's unfortunate because I feel like there are probably people there who genuinely want to make this game, but they are wrapped up in so much weird bullshit that there's just no way they're ever going to be able to get people past that.
Yeah, and if they want it, especially when they came out with the Kickstarter and then left and then came back again, there needs to be a certain acknowledgement of being a little more humble, being a little more honest, being a little more transparent. And I always got the impression, whether we were talking to Dennis ourselves at E3, that there was just kind of like we'll just brush this aside mentality, like, just like don't look over here. And I think they would have gotten a lot more mileage out of, and maybe they weren't in a position to, maybe for legal reasons they couldn't, or whatever. But at least say that, right? Like, instead it always came across as, well, these guys got to be hiding something. And then when you'd have all these hiccups along the way, it's just like, well, maybe this was not meant to be, you guys. Maybe this was just not how this was supposed to go.
Right.
And I never felt like Dennis Dyack always felt very genuine in his passion for creating this when I have spoken with him.
Sure.
But I never got the humble guy apologizing, I think, that people wanted. People never got this is where I screwed up. Instead, it was like, I'm not a manager anymore. I'm just a creative, right? Yeah. So it's sort of tacitly acknowledging that there was a problem without actually explaining what happened, and that's I think what ultimately doomed them was, what got them any sort of interest was Dennis Dyack, and what doomed them from being funded was Dennis Dyack. So you're in a catch-22.
Yeah.
You make a spiritual successor to Eternal Darkness without him? Probably not. But when you do it with him, you get everything that comes along with a guy who has not released a quality game in a number of years. And at the end of the day, a quality game is what will erase people's sort of that you could be a horrible person, but you put out a good game and you'll get a decent number of the audience to forget about it. And he hasn't put out a good game. And that's kind of that's where that ends.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know Dennis Dyack personally. I never worked with the guy. All I know about him is the myriad stories I've heard over the years about him from people who either have worked with him or have interacted with him. When you and I sat down with him in D3, it was like, yes, he was apologetic, he was contrite, he was very like, I understand what I did wrong, I understand why I did this and that and whatever. The problem is he never said what any of those things were. Like, he was just, he said, I shouldn't have been a manager, I'm a creative guy, I didn't, it's like, obviously, I've made mistakes. And it's like, well, what were those mistakes? Like he wouldn't or couldn't point to a single thing where he could say, this is what I did wrong, here's why I'm not doing that anymore. And because of that, all his apology stuff felt very manufactured in the way that a PR tour, an image rebuilding tour is supposed to be, but it did not. None of it rang true at all. And the problem is that he was sitting with another guy who I guess was like either the COO or one of the main people at the company, and he seemed like anytime you would ask him a question about something pertaining to the game, he would go immediately back to a default answer about how the community is supporting them. They're all this, the troops are rallying behind them. They're very excited. None of them had answers for anything. None of them had anything meaningful to say other than we really want to make this game. And it's one of those things where you're never going to say everything. You're never going to be completely honest when you're dealing with trade press and trying to get a product promoted out there. But if you really want to change the perception of your company and the people that you're working with, you have to kind of go beyond the basic stock PR answers that you wrote, on the plane ride over. And they just never got past that. And even into this latest Kickstarter, it seems like they never found a way to say anything of substance to anyone that would actually get them on board beyond the fucking $400,000 they raised, which I can't believe they even raised that much, to be honest with you.
As well said. I think you're right on the money. But they were not right on the money.
No, they were not. Hang on, I got it. There we go. All right. I was looking up at a headline. I wasn't ready for it. All right. Speaking of nightmares, Final Fantasy XIV relaunched late last week. So Final Fantasy XIV came out for a while. It was really bad. Square Enix apologized, said they were going to redo the whole game. They had this big revamp they were going to launch. People have been sort of, like, I guess some people have been hotly anticipating that. Me, not a Final Fantasy nor a MMO person, not so much, but I have been watching this with some curiosity. So the game relaunched, and lo and behold, the launch was kind of a shit show. People were having mad problems even getting registered on Square Enix's site. People were trying to get into the world and were getting straight up, "This world is full" messages, no queue, no anything like that. It basically sounds like things have not been going very well for a relaunch of Final Fantasy XIV. I cannot say I'm surprised by that. I am sort of surprised at the scope and severity of how bad it is, considering just how awful the last launch for that game was. Patrick, my question to you: does Square Enix really need to keep making Final Fantasy MMOs at this point? They have not really demonstrated a lot of adeptness at this, personally, I don't think.
Well, 11 made a lot of money. You know,
Yes.
that game went on for an extraordinarily long amount of time. They made a number of expansions for it, all of which were, or most of which were paid for. And so 11 was a huge success for them. So I don't begrudge them for trying to make that happen a second time. And in fact, I give them a lot of credit for basically doing a complete reboot of the project midstream. You know, whether that pays off for them, I don't know, but it's certainly an interesting experiment and is absolutely unparalleled in development, MMO or non-MMO. I mean, I get, to their credit, I get, my understanding is this is early access, so
Right.
part of early access is if you're an early adopter, shit's going to go wrong. So I think some of that's kind of built into it. Hopefully, this all gets ironed out before the proper launch. I think if this happens at launch after you have this during early access, that's a little less excusable. And, the game is being sort of, relaunched midstream, but it already launched. Like, you would hope that some of these issues were worked out, but apparently not. I think I saw very briefly that Brad mentioned trying to register and get into that, but he wasn't able to even register an account. So he wasn't able to get to the phase of playing the game and be upset
That's
about
the kind
that.
of stuff that I'm talking about, where it's like, from what I've understood, from people who actually have been able to get in and play this, if you like Final Fantasy XIV on any level, content-wise, it is several orders of magnitude better than it was before, which is great to hear. It's great that they actually listened to fans. They did, they made a lot of key, content improvements for that game. The thing I'm sort of flabbergasted by is the fact that you don't even have server queues. Like, you literally can't even get your registration servers working. Like, I get that there are hiccups that you have with launches of MMOs. That always happens. But this is, like, kind of MMO 101 stuff. Like, this is the kind of thing you do. Like, after your first MMO, you kind of figure out these are the things that you need to get just any sort of, like, user base going in your game. And, I mean, I guess, it sounds like, some people today playing are having an easier time than they did over the course of the weekend, which I guess is when everyone tried to, jump in and play.
Right.
But it's like, you have to know those people are coming. You have to be kind of aware that that stuff is coming. And I realize that, launching things, we've obviously launched websites that did not work super well when they first came up, which, were, but apart from that, it's like, this level of it, especially when you have a game that's, again, PR damaged, when you already have this damaged an image going in, you kind of have to have that stuff worked out before you let people back in, because otherwise that's not going to change the perception people had of your game. It's still just going to make them frustrated and want to quit again.
Right. Yeah. Well, hopefully the game's good. I don't know. Like, I get, at the end of the day, launch issues aside, hopefully it's a good game. My guess is it'll still be an MMO, so I will still remain disinterested in playing it ever. But hopefully for the people who are invested in that world, that pays off for them. See, I want to. If people have questions, at me in the chat at Patrick Klepek, and we'll get around to answering some of those after we run through a couple other headlines.
Good deal. Just real quick, apparently there are server queues in the game. They were just not working at all over the weekend.
Oh,
that's why
great.
everyone was all fucked. So they're there. Yeah, okay.
Wonderful.
So there are server queues. They just weren't working, and maybe now they are working. So,
congratulations. I'm happy for you, Square.
Yes. All right.
So one thing that was interesting about these GTA 5 leaks, which, again, we won't touch on the spoilers. I haven't looked because I obviously want to experience the game myself when it comes out, but it was not that the soundtrack was sort of extracted from that, but audio files of the game's dialogue were pulled out, and essentially you can go and look up what happens in the ending
Right.
at this point. And so, in response to that, I guess this happened due to the European storefront of PSN, where you could preload the game, and Sony has since come out and apologized, and they've taken it down. One of their big things going into next generation is going to be stuff like this,
Right.
and if there are still issues, you don't hear about this on Steam.
No.
You can preload away, no big deal. But we are about to make a big transition to a internet-focused PlayStation 4, and it seemed like this was a perfect test case for them to showcase, hey, we've got our infrastructure better together, we can handle these big games, you can download them ahead of time, please buy digital. That's a big part of our push next gen. And they can't guarantee to not compromise the integrity of the data for the companies that are giving them access to those games, and then as a result of that, the games get pulled down, and the people who want to purchase digitally so that they can play those games the moment it unlocks are now unable to do so. And that seems to set a real poor tone for the PS4 coming out later this year. It bums me out because assholes that go in there and take that data then ruin it for the rest of us who want these kinds of services, who want to be able to participate in this kind of marketplace. Now we can't do that.
Right.
And Microsoft tried to do some stuff like this before. There was famously Halo Reach was pulled down from their servers right around the time when Microsoft was actually going to make this change with how they dealt with the press, and rather than distributing debug code and retail copies ahead of release, they were just going to throw it up on the Xbox Live servers ahead of time and just distribute codes. Makes it easier for everyone involved. That's sort of like inside baseball, but was one of the first steps of what was happening with the press, and then was going to be something that obviously probably happened with consumers as they got more comfortable with it. But then Reach got pulled down, and they stopped doing that, and then we were just kind of told, we'll see about doing that again, once we're at next gen and our stuff's a little safer. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it all around was a real bummer, and I have consistently sort of said that as heartened as I am about Sony's changes in a lot of ways, in terms of network services, I'm not 100% confident behind them, and this certainly does not seem like a great indication that they're prepped for a couple months from now.
Well, it's the one big thing that they obviously are still behind on. You can talk about them, getting out ahead of the PR message. You can talk about them showing off a ton of, really interesting games over the course of the last several months. Our hardware architecture, all this stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of really great things to love about the PS4. But the problem, the biggest problem that Sony had over the course of the PS3's lifespan, apart from just kind of not necessarily getting the third-party exclusive it always wanted, was that the online service was never completely reliable. Yes, it was free, but at the same time, there were the hacks. There have been, service issues, many service issues over the years, slowness to just shit not working. And Xbox Live, for all its dumb problems, is a much more reliable model. It has been for, the entirety of this generation, pretty much. And which isn't to say that it's foolproof or unhackable, because it's certainly people have gotten accounts hacked and other things have happened. But when you see stuff like this for a game as high profile as GTA 5, Rockstar is not a very forgiving company. Which is not to say that they will somehow blacklist Sony or something, but that is not a company you want to piss off, because when it comes to negotiating exclusive content for the next time around or other things, you anger them, they will hold grudges. And this is the time when Sony needs to be demonstrating that it's learning lessons and that it has figured out this online stuff, and the PS4 is going to solve these problems and shit like this is not going to happen. But I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. And not just because they're not trying, but because there's always going to be people who try to hack this stuff, who try to get their, work their way in to take things that should not be taken. I don't know that the people who are running that online infrastructure have the know-how or necessarily the means to eradicate that stuff in a way that will actually, take care of it. I don't think anyone does, and I think that Sony, least of all, already coming from behind in this position, is not necessarily best suited to fix this in time for the launch of their next platform.
I will say there are a couple people in the chat pointing out that perhaps Rockstar is not completely innocent in what happened.
Sure.
I guess Jared says, a large part of the GTA 5 was Rockstar not encrypting the files. The audio files had their own format, but to make them readable, people just had to change the file extension to MP3. So.
And that's dumb, and they should have fixed that, and they should have encrypted that stuff. But, you know, at the same time, I imagine they did that because they, you know, maybe foolishly expected that those files would not be, you know, early accessible to anyone.
I mean, yeah, I am not a hacker. I am not a network administrator. You know, all I can really do is say, from like ignorant of all that stuff, just looking at it, it looks bad and paints a poor picture for a digitally focused console that's coming out in a couple of months. You know, regardless of whether maybe Rockstar made a mistake on how they encrypted their files, whether Sony should have caught that or not. You know, all of that aside, it looks bad, and ultimately, the worst part about it is if you got, you know, the people that if you're out on the internet and people spoil, you know, what's happening, like that sucks. So hopefully you're able to remain pure for the last couple of weeks.
I can't remember what game. Oh, it was BioShock Infinite. The week before that game came out, there were some story leaks and stuff like that, and apparently certain editors at various magazines were actually getting emails with subject lines that spoiled the ending of BioShock Infinite because people are dicks.
I think I want to say Jeff got one.
I know Game Informer guys got a bunch of them got it. So.
Yeah, and that stuff sucks. I understand why that happens, but you're an asshole.
Yeah, people are assholes.
Yeah.
Want to do a couple of short ones and then jump into some user questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
There is a new Terminators video game coming from the people who are bringing you that Rambo video game. Patrick, on a scale of super excited to holy shit, my head's going to explode, how excited are you for this?
Who is Reef Entertainment?
I don't know, but they're making Rambo and they're making Terminators, as in plural.
I'm looking up their... Okay. Sniper Elite for Wii.
Yes, okay.
They did the port. They probably didn't make it. World War Zero. What is it?
Huh?
The Russian Revolution took place, but the Mad Baron Ugenberg mercilessly crushed the Bolsheviks. The Baron is... Nope. I'm not going to read the rest of that. Some game called Free Running for the Wii, PS2, and PSP. Okay. I don't know who this company is. Man, nobody wanted the rights to the Terminator franchise. They're making another trilogy of movies. What are they doing?
I don't know. Maybe this is their bold first step to get out ahead of that stuff. To be like, all right, Terminator is going to be really relevant again soon. So let's put this out and hope for something. And I don't know.
Yeah.
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 I only got one more.
Okay.
And you already tweeted about this morning, so I already have an idea how you feel about it. Adblock, crowdfunding. How's that sound to you?
Adblock. So let me explain. I'll explain my position on Adblock, which is
it's probably my position too. So go ahead.
I don't, on its face, have a problem with people using Adblock. I think there are. I don't have them, but I don't doubt there are perhaps some legitimate reasons for people to go to certain websites where they are trying to protect themselves from malware or spyware or exploitative ads that Adblock is convenient for getting rid of. My problem with Adblock is that it, especially with this crowdfunding campaign, it is completely disingenuous because, or maybe it's not disingenuous, and that's actually what bothers me about it, is they're saying they want a world without ads. And what Adblock started as was, I want a world... I can sort of see what you're doing in the other camera there. The users can't see it. It's getting rid of exploitative ads that bother people and can compromise their systems and are extremely annoying. I think that was a noble goal, and I think Adblock has 100% succeeded in getting rid of those. Most major websites you go to, if they have ads, it is purely to support their website. And when people have Adblock or Adblock Plus on by default, how many websites do you go to and you only click the content, you like it, and then you leave? When you whitelist it, then that website gets credit for that click. But if you just go to that website once, enjoy the content, whitelist it, and then never go back, it's like that click never happened. And if you were using Adblock in order to just keep yourself safe, that's fine, and you're using whitelist in the appropriate way, that's fine. But I don't think most people do that. I don't think most people know the harm that ad block does to websites. And trying to raise funds for ads is, man, fuck you.
Yeah. No, and it's unfortunate for a variety of reasons. I don't know what you're laughing about. This is not a joking issue whatsoever. But what I'll say is, I mean, I echo most of your points. I feel like you and I have very much the same viewpoint on this stuff, especially considering I mean, if I'm completely honest, when we were at Whiskey Media, getting ad sales and getting, ads on our sites was never the easiest thing in the world, especially for an independent company that doesn't have like a big ad sales team or, doesn't have like a good ad network working with them on a regular basis. It was hard. It was hard to make money that way. And, we've been in the very fortunate position where we've been able to offer services, through subscription or whatever else that, gave people an option where if they didn't want to see ads on the site, if they wanted certain content, they could come in and they could buy a subscription, and then we wouldn't have to inundate them with that stuff. But not everyone has that model. Not everyone can work that model. And when I see people getting laid off at various sites, when I see that media, I mean, look, media is a dying fucking industry. It doesn't matter which arm of media you're in. My girlfriend who works in print media has had to kind of switch over to online, and even finding like online media jobs these days, especially anything that isn't just like content writer. Is a real pain in the ass. I mean, her site literally laid off all its writers recently and then went into a licensing deal with a content farm. Like they just have a group of writers who pitch articles that, come in from this contract source. And it's, in my opinion, that is a disgusting model that is unfortunately, necessitated by the fact that they cannot afford, to give real writers salaries. And I this ad block thing, yeah, if you're getting fucking inundated with porn ads, fine. Don't, like block that site, whatever. But if you're just blocking every ad that you come across on the site, you are actually costing a lot of the sites that you peruse money.
It's piracy. Like yeah. It is piracy. It's not that I don't disagree that the ad model is broken. I do think it's broken, and
it's totally broken.
And it's not a viable business model going forward to pay writers to keep websites with the lights on. But I don't think that gives you an excuse to pirate content. You can acknowledge that the business is broken and needs a new model, but that does not give you license to steal it. I can't go into McDonald's and say, well, I don't have a buck, I got 75 cents, give me a burger. Like, it just doesn't work that way. You can agree that to not like what's being asked of you in order to enjoy that content, but that doesn't give you the right to have the content free of charge. And what most websites charge is that there are ads, and you don't even have to click on them. I think that's also something that people don't understand is you don't have to click on the ads for them to for the website to make money. It is impressions based. It is largely not click through as much anymore. And so when the ads don't show up, are you La Parka? Is that what people are saying? Is that what that meant? Okay, all right.
Yes.
All right, La Parka. All you have to do is view it. So when you whitelist a site and the ads show up, you are still getting that impression. You don't have to click the ad. I don't know a ton about the ad market. I believe that those click-throughs are worth more, but that you are still a website is still getting money or fulfilling an ad agreement by having the ads just show up and be an impression. So
yeah.
I don't know.
I just want to reiterate, I don't have a problem with people who have ad block on their computer and are only using it for, sites that are just absolutely, wrecking their computer with ads or whatever, what have you. Right. But if you're just default having that stuff off everywhere you go, congratulations, you're basically just taking money out of the pockets of the people you're looking at. And I know that you can sit there and probably think about a dozen ways to justify it that, you've discovered through various conversations on message boards, but guess what? None of it really matters. You're still fucking over the sites that you supposedly like, and I'm sorry it inconveniences you to look at ads, and I'm sorry that you have this principled stance that banner ads are not okay, and this is my user experience is more important, what have you. But that's bullshit. I'm sorry. There's just no other way to put it. That is bullshit, and have fun justifying that while you are also kind of fucking over the very media sites that you supposedly like.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will get off our high horse, and we will answer some questions. Let's see. Wonderful 101 comes out soon, too. There are actually a decent number of games coming out pretty soon. Let's see. Well, a lot of people asking for Thoughts on ad block? See the last 5 minutes. Uh, William McBride asks, have you played any Surrey You Were Being Hunted? No, I have not, but I have redeemed a code to check it out. But I suspect I will not have a chance to see any more of that before we get back from PAX.
That is a game I've heard many, many good things about. I have just not had a chance to check it out myself.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but really interesting things, and it's also kind of like Gunpoint, a case where a games writer has gone off to work on a game. Gunpoint was largely made by Tom Francis by himself, whereas Surrey Being Hunted is partially developed by a small team where one of the writers is from, I think it might be the founder of Rock Paper Shotgun, but I know there's a Rock Paper Shotgun involvement there, so it's interesting to see how some of that stuff has happened. Oh, Alex,
Yes.
Video Game King says, my birthday is this Friday, but sadly no bombing the AM that day. Can I get a celebratory birthday howl from the wolf?
Ow! 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 Was that good?
That was good.
Happy birthday.
That was good. Happy birthday, Video Game King. You are the king. The king deserves a howl.
The king of video games.
See, Donaghy Luke, do you think GTA 5 will suffer frame rate issues on consoles considering how large that game seems to be? You would hope not. I would hope not, given that if they are not having a PC version come out day and date, it seems like there will be one eventually, but if it's not coming out day and date, then not that the issues with Saints Row are excusable, but at least there's an option, right? Like you can say, hey, if you get the PC version, no frame rate problems. That's not going to be the case with GTA 5. So I'm hoping that will be largely a pretty solid 30 frames per second experience.
Yeah, I bought the console version specifically because, as much as the Saints Row stuff was worrisome to me, I was of the mind that this is the last GTA on this console generation. These games are theoretically built for consoles. It's the first platforms they're coming out on. I just wanted, I kind of wanted that to be kind of the send-off for the last of, my big 360 library of games. And, maybe there will be some problems. There have always been some, visual hiccups and what have you in the console versions of GTA games, but I can't remember the last time it was so bad that I found it was kind of ruinous. It was probably on the PSP. Honestly, the last time I sat there and went, this is just garbage. But I'm not that worried about it. What they've shown of that stuff gives me some hope that it will probably still be, pretty good visually and run pretty well. So, yeah.
A lot of people asking about PAX plans. Do you have any, or are you just going to show up and see what happens?
I personally, I'm planning on just showing up and street passing the shit out of everyone. And
I need some panels. I need some photo panels.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to speaking of panels, I might go to a couple of them, including I hear there's a giant bomb panel on Saturday night, which I don't know might be of some interest to
Are you invited? Are you going to that?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, the line's always kind of shitty, and it smells. But other than that, I hear they're pretty funny. I might go. I don't know. And then there's the Cards Against Humanity panel on Friday night, which
I think that's Sunday night.
Is that Sunday night?
So I am unfortunately going to miss that because I treated this PAX as I'm pretending there's not an extra day.
If that is Sunday night, I'm going to be bummed because I'm not actually going to be there either. I'm leaving on Sunday afternoon. So
I'm pretty sure that's on Sunday night. I know Jeff will be there.
Okay.
So if people are watching this or at PAX, Jeff should be at the Cards Against Humanity panel. I completely sort of blanked on there being a whole extra day. Plus, I kind of get my fill of PAX by that third day, and I've had a chance to kind of see everyone and walk the floor, and I kind of want to enjoy my day off on Labor Day. So, so selfishly, I am leaving a little bit early so that I can do that.
Yeah, this being Labor Day weekend, I wanted one day home to actually do stuff. So Monday, I will have that day. But this is actually my first PAX in Seattle in several years, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to just kind of wandering around, hanging out, and seeing people and doing stuff. We don't make a lot of plans at PAX. That's not really our MO. We just kind of like to walk around, see people, hang out, do stuff. And it's nice that we have that luxury, because I know a lot of people have to book appointments for PAX, and I always kind of look at them and go, man, I'm sorry. I know you're a journalist and everything, but like, dude, I mean, it's PAX. Just go talk to people, like hang out, do stuff. Like, what? You just saw most of these games at Gamescom, or will see them again at TGS. You're not seeing anything different, really, for the most part. Like, come on.
Yeah, we're very fortunate in that respect,
Yeah.
and it also allows me to, like, I still am doing a pretty decent amount of work at PAX, but it's because like I get a chance to go and do the stuff that I don't normally get a chance to do,
Right.
which is to have no schedule and then just walk around with an audio recorder and try and find some cool people to talk to.
Exactly.
Like,
That's the thing. That's the social aspect can be the work aspect too. That's where you can go around. You can find people to talk to that you wouldn't otherwise. Like, just I don't know. I think it's just the booking of preview appointments at PAX that always just sort of seemed like counterproductive to what that show seems like it is actually built for.
yeah, like the few things I actually book in advance are stuff that like sort of require slots. Like, I'm gonna get a chance to interview Hideki Kamiya to talk about Wonderful 101, and I booked a slot to talk to Keiji Inafune. So it's like those guys. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to TGS, so I'm not gonna have a chance to talk to those guys otherwise. So I will book a slot and go get my 20 minutes with them. And the only other things I think I've booked in advance are the translator of Earthbound reached out. Kotaku ran a pretty cool profile of him, I think, last Friday. And that was Jason Schreier ran something about him. But he reached out after I wrote my little piece about Earthbound and was like, hey, do you want to talk about Earthbound? I was like, well, as long as you talk about Earthbound into this little microphone, then we're good to go.
Yeah.
So I've got that booked. But other than that, I'm just going to be wandering around and mostly, hopefully, running into people and saying hi, because that is totally the reason we go, is to interact with Giant Bomb fans, because we don't get many chances to do that every year.
Agreed.
All right. So I think that will bring Bombin the A.M. to a close for, well, this week, because you and I are going to be in PAX. You get it on Thursday, I get it on Wednesday, and we will reunite on Saturday night at the Giant Bomb panel. I should probably look up where it is. I could tell people. That's
Yes, I can never remember what theater it is, but
schedule. Giant. Super Giant Games. Nope. You can go to that too. 8 p.m. in the Pegasus Theater. 8 to 10:30. And we went a little long last time, so we'll keep going until they kick us out.
yeah.
But with that, so we aren't going to do a Friday show, but
No.
we will look into maybe doing a Tuesday morning show or a Wednesday morning show or something like that. We'll regroup once PAX is finished. But I will see you later this week, Alex.
I will see you as well. It'll be good to actually see you in person and not just on camera. And if you're coming out to Seattle, come up, say hi, shake our hands. Don't hug us, because that's a little much.
You can hug Alex.
No.
You can hug Alex.
No.
All right, bye, Alex.
Bye, Patrick.